Hello, friends, enemies, gather round. It's time for Perhaps It's You.
It's your favorite unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast.
I think we all know that's true.
We're so unofficial.
Very.
Keep your cease and desist letters to yourselves, Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah,
we're unofficial. We don't represent Unsolved Mysteries. We never even knew Robert Stack.
No, I never met him once.
Nope.
Never. Not a single time.
I was watching this episode, and Travis walked into the room and asks me a very normal question that a husband would ask a wife, which is, where is Robert Stack buried?
Sure, yeah.
I actually didn't know. I knew it wasn't Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Sure. I was able to say that, but I did have to Google it. I didn't. And then I felt like, how could I even claim to have an Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast if I don't know where Robert Stack is buried? I had to look it up on Find a Grave.
Where is he buried?
Now, of course, you're going to ask me that. It's like West Lawn Cemetery or something in LA.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yep.
I suppose I should go visit him. Say hi.
Say hello.
I'd be like, hey, what's up?
He's interred. He's cremated. I don't know if he's in a mausoleum or in the ground. I didn't look that far into it.
I do feel like I should pay my, part of having an Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast is I should probably go pay my respects,
We probably should.
Just, wish him the best, chilling in the afterlife.
Absolutely.
Do you think
he's on a yacht? Maybe he's playing tennis.
I was going to say he probably never wears a trench coat again. He's like, I'm done with that.
Oh, no, he's in that tennis uniform with the shorts. You know the one. Everyone sends us a picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an eternal sunny tennis game for him.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm tired.
Same.
It's possible that, there should have been a clue in the fact that we refer to spooky season as busy season.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's a sign. Oh, don't do that.
Pace yourself. Slow. But the problem is we live our lives as if Halloween is year round, but the rest of the world doesn't. And so all of these fun spooky events happen in October. It's a lot to cram in 1 month.
I know, but now I'm so tired, and I'm no offense to Samantha, but I can't socialize anymore. My poor introvert heart is just dead.
We have one more event, and it's a regularly scheduled event. We have a book club meeting this afternoon, and then my social calendar just drops off, and I can't wait to just hibernate for the month of November.
I know. I know. I'm honestly I wrote do nothing across the first weekend of November in my planner, and I that's what I'm so excited about.
We've been so busy. Should we tell our listeners what we've been up to? The last we left off, we had gone to Spooky Train Day, which people love. Spooky Train Day, I love it. Your listeners get us. That's all I have to say.
I was trying to explain it the other night to some of my brother's friends, and I'm sure they were just like, what? And then the next day I was wearing the sweatshirt, and I was like, yeah, from Spooky Train Day. And they were clearly like, okay. But no. But our listeners were keyed into why that was such a good time, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. So another thing we did is we went out to the Thayer Hotel in Annandale, Minnesota.
Approximately 5 hours away from my home. Oh my God. It was so far away.
For a ghost tour. And I have a lot of thoughts about this experience. It was very fun, but I have never been on a ghost tour where the person giving the tour had so many paranormal experiences.
Oh my God. This must be the most haunted place in America, possibly the world.
It was a unique experience. The tour was held by a team called Search for Spirits.
Okay, I was trying to remember their name the other day when I was telling someone about this, and I could not remember it. All I remembered was the guy's shirt with the cross on it, but I knew you had gotten a business card.
I got a business card because it's really something. So the T in spirits is the cross, And they didn't make a huge deal about it, but sort of the mission of their organization is not just to find ghosts and prove there are ghosts, which they seem to think they've proven like a million times over, but to like help people find Jesus and cross over into heaven, or
Is that
help
is
spirits find Jesus and
I
cross
have
over into
I have
heaven.
questions about that last part. I have some
I
serious questions.
We didn't ask any questions on the tour about this specifically. I guess it would have seemed rude. Also, this guy was very animated. I'm
I've
quite sure
never
what
met someone quite like this man.
I'm not quite sure what the right word is. I mean, I think he totally believed everything that he was saying. I don't know that I believe what he was saying, but those are two different things.
I've never come across a ghost hunting organization quite like this one. Not that I've interacted
No.
with a lot of them, but you watch shows, right? Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters,
We've taken
etc.
a
We've gone on
handful
many
of
ghost tours.
tours. Yeah. Certainly in the area, we've gone on a handful of tours. We went on one in Chicago. I went on one in New Orleans and also in Los Angeles. None of them were anything like this experience because this is not a large hotel, folks. This was a
There's like
hotel
8 rooms.
built, turn of the century to be a stop on the railroad, but people don't, use that. It's not a passenger rail line anymore. Um, every room, every step of this hotel.
So haunted.
So he had stories about like 12 ghosts that he had talked to, that other people had seen. They had literal recordings from ghost boxes they could play of things that had happened in different rooms. They had
Clearest EVPs I've ever heard.
very clear,
I
very
mean,
clear.
like someone is in the room speaking. Not like, oh, you kind of have to like grasp it through the fuzzy white noise and you think you heard something, and usually they can tell you what is being said and then you hear it because you've been told it. This was like someone speaking.
There was a story that they found a rosary on the floor of the hotel. Well, he did, and then his teammate was like, "That's weird. I have a rosary like that in my bag." And then they like went back to his room, and it had been removed from his suitcase by a ghost and left on the floor for some reason. Just literally every step of this hotel had like 12 ghosts hanging out. There was a room where there was a ghost under the bed that would grab your ankles. There was ghosts like knocking over stuff in the kitchen. There were ghosts. There was supposedly okay. I am skeptical of many things, but one is that at this hotel that was for railway passengers in the middle of nowhere, there was one room frequented by ladies of the evening. Only one? Okay. Um,
It was as if they had reserved a room just for this
yeah, they're
purpose. I
like,
find
"This
it
is
a little hard to believe.
this is the sex work room, and we're only gonna have sex for money in here." And the there was apparently, ghost recordings that were too dirty for him to play for us, which I feel like is because the group was mostly women, so I feel like that was a little sexist, that he wouldn't play us the ghosts being like, I don't even know what. I'm gonna lick your dick. I have no idea, and now I'll never know.
I wanted to hear those recordings, but again, it felt a little rude to like. Also, he probably didn't have them at hand. Maybe he did. I don't know.
Who knows?
But
Okay, this I described him later as like an eloquent hobo. I can't quite. He had like a long beard. I don't know. He had
he
a
kept
very
seeing things out of the corner of his eye and jumping, like
and they were
getting
just
startled.
people. They were just people in the
There were just
hotel.
other people walking around in the hotel. The hotel had it all decorated like for Halloween, which was very cool. And people who were there for like dinner were coming up to see the decorations or use the bathroom. There's only like one bathroom and it was on the second floor. Um so yeah, people would walk behind him and he would just be like, "Oh, a ghost."
Yeah, I think this guy interprets basically everything as a ghost. And he
That might be
said
it.
that when he's sleeping, he has to put in earplugs because otherwise spirits are going to constantly communicate with him. So, as you may know, we're a big fan of Dangerous Linda, who is a local ghost guide. She does tours in Minneapolis and St. Paul and Stillwater in the area. And she had once told us a story about a ghost following her home from a haunted location, and that really freaking her out. And so the question that I asked him was if that had ever happened to him. I felt that was a very like, innocuous but interesting question, right? It wasn't a I don't believe anything you're saying question. It was, have you ever had this? She referred to it as like a hitchhiker ghost. Has a ghost ever like latched onto you and followed you home? Listeners, I want you to guess how many times this man claimed this has happened to him. I want you possibly to write down a number. You could just think of it in your mind. How many times this man has had a ghost follow him home from a haunted location? Okay, do you have it? Is it 50 to 60 times a year? And he's been doing this for a decade. So once a week, folks, more than once a week, a ghost follows him home from a haunt, sometimes through his telephone.
They'll like jump through the telephone if he's talking to like someone. I did not really understand.
I'm not sure he realizes that, like, is he using a landline? It's like literally following the wire. I was so confused.
It doesn't
But
make any sense.
But I would love to see a photo of my face as I register that he just said 50 to 60 times. Because I was expecting him to be like, oh, sure, like once or twice, but 50 to 60 times a year.
I think I audibly gasped and said, "That's a lot."
I think you did.
I couldn't control it because at this point in the tour, he had already he said he was going to say a prayer for us at the end. He had already told us about their mission.
Yeah.
And I just kept feeling Liz's eyes on me and trying not to look over at you the entire tour.
I promised that we were being very polite. We were really going along with the thing and having a good time and being like, oh, I get a bad feeling in this room or, whatever.
I legitimately did feel something in my head in that one room where he asked if anyone had a feeling, and I had the right answer.
Yeah.
People feel tingling in their head, and that's exactly what I was feeling.
I feel like it has a little bit more to do with on level floors, and I feel like Brian from Paranormal Home Inspectors could debunk a lot of these things is my point. Like I think some of the rooms
have a cat. Is there a hotel cat in this place?
I feel like some of the rooms have bad vibes because the floor suddenly goes down, and also they're very small, and the wallpaper is like claustrophobic feeling.
Every room is very claustrophobic. Dim lighting.
Just very loud patterns, and which I'm not against.
I'm sure you can hear everything in that hotel. If someone creaks a floorboard 2 floors above you, I'm sure you can hear it.
It's it's an old building. It's been remodeled a few different times. But yeah, I do want to
very respectful. I do too. I want to stay in that honeymoon suite where there's a hot tub in the room that's like bigger. Like it takes up most of the room.
Most of that room is a hot tub, and it's just pretty much the size of the bed.
I'm into it.
The story about that room was supposedly couples were always fighting when they stayed in that room because of, I don't know, bad vibes. So he came in and blessed it, and now they don't fight anymore.
People are having sweet, sexy time in that tub now.
Yeah.
Here's my question about the mission of their organization, which I did not ask because, again, we were trying to be very respectful. He told one, by my count, maybe 2, but definitely 1, no more than 2 stories about actually crossing a ghost over.
Yeah.
It was like they were downstairs in the kitchen and they sensed, folks, this is what he said, okay? There was a mom and like 2 children from Egypt. For some reason, we're in the Thayer Hotel in Annandale, Minnesota. No explanation given for why that would be. But he was not comfortable with the idea of children being stuck here on Earth and wanted to pass them over to, I guess, heaven. And he asked the manager of the hotel if he could do this. And so he did. He passed them over. Here's my question. If you believe in the Christian version of heaven, which is a great paradise where we all want to be, are you not passing every ghost over to? Are you allowing some ghosts to stay trapped on Earth? And if you are, what is the motivation for doing that? Is it to keep this tourists coming to this haunted hotel to see ghosts? Are you and then if that's the case, are you keeping spirits trapped on Earth, keeping them from heaven, from paradise for like a profit? Or
Yeah.
here's my other idea. I want to give this man the benefit of the doubt. Are there just so many fucking ghosts that he passes all these ghosts over and then they just refills? Like it's just like water just flowing into this place?
It did seem like there was an awful lot of ghosts in this one location. He seemed particularly concerned about children being stuck on this plane and not moving on to heaven. So I think that's kind of why he focused on that set of spirits.
Very hilarious that he needed permission from management to pass a ghost over.
Yeah, I can't explain that. Would they even know that happened? He clearly is working very closely with the management of that hotel, because they're there a lot. And sometimes they'll do like lockdowns to do like paranormal investigations where they're the only
and they
people
only
in the
have
hotel.
guests. We should have said this. They only have guests stay the night on the weekends, which I guess is why this event had to happen on a Wednesday. But
yeah. So that's why we got to go in all the rooms and stuff, which was very cool. And Samantha didn't get to enjoy it, but actually the food there is amazing. So shout out to the Thayer Hotel. I guess shout out to Search for Spirits. You're an interesting organization. It was a unique experience. His business card is on one side. It says Search for Spirits, and it's about the ghost hunting thing. And then you flip it over and it says Search for Heaven. And then it's some religious thing. It's kind of unbelievable to me.
Not
I
all
guess
ghosts can search for heaven, though. We got to keep a few. Gotta keep a few in the
hotel. Why else would we be driving out to Annandale, Minnesota, if there weren't some ghosts? That hot tub though. There's also a room with a heart-shaped tub. I want to stay in that one. Though that's in the room where there's supposedly a ghost under the bed that will grab your feet. I'm willing to risk it.
I'm not staying in that room. Absolutely not.
I don't think I'll let my foot dangle over the side of the bed, childhood style, because the monster might grab it. But I do want to stay in that room. I really liked that room.
I'll stay in the honeymoon suite.
Samantha will be
by myself. That tub is mine and mine alone. I'm gonna stay in the tub all weekend.
Okay, comment if Samantha and I should record an episode from the Thayer Hotel and see if we can get some ghosts on the line, since there's so many.
I'm gonna be so scared. Like, I don't even fucking believe in this, and I would be jumping out of my skin.
Yeah, I think we should do it. Mostly for the tubs, but
well, that's my main motivation. Also, I didn't get to eat a meal there. I had to leave and drive home, just go to bed, get up for work the next day.
It was very good. What else have we done? We went to the zoo for the jack-o'-lantern thing that we do.
The jack-o'-lantern spectacular at the Minnesota Zoo. Love this event. We've gone like 4 or 5 times now.
Very cool. Thousands of jack-o'-lanterns. They're like in the trees. They're in these really elaborate displays. This year, my favorite part was the reason I'm bringing this up is there was a UFO part that had a UFO with jack-o'-lanterns in it. There was
multiple
2 of them,
UFOs,
actually.
yes.
And they were like
jack-o'-lanterns inside.
flashing lights to each other while the X-Files theme played. It was very cool. This year was library themed.
My favorite theme so far, I think. It was a little light on books. I guess that's my only complaint for a library themed display. It was a little light on books, but
we were there with our resident librarian Megan, and she was pleased that they were pointing out that the library has more than books. And I was like, yeah, but it does have books though. It doesn't not have books. Like, yes, it has board games and video games and movies and music and all this, but it does. The libraries do tend to have books.
Also hilariously, and I guess it's a visual medium, whatever, but like a lot of the books that were featured in these jack-o'-lanterns also had like either a movie or TV version, and so they depicted the like movie version on
right, yeah.
Which okay, like that's the visual version of like whatever. I get it, but I was also kind of like. Light on books is all I'm saying.
But it's always very fun, extremely wholesome activity that we like to do to go wander through the zoo and just so many jack-lanterns.
Oh, absolutely. You get a hot cider, you walk
Ugh, it's
through, there's
lovely.
music playing. It is really very fun.
Though there was a band that was playing music that doesn't have any words. I don't know what the term for that is.
It was
Which,
like a jazz band. They were playing, it was like slow jazz. We walked by, we were like, oh, we got baby making music playing at this
which is
jack-o'-lantern
weird
event.
because this is kind of like, I would say, like a family event. It's more geared towards like families. And so there's a lot of kids and like costumes there. And parents had like brought them to the band area to like dance, but it's just like slow jazz. And so we're walking by and I was like, play Monster Mash.
I mean, really, my experience, and I don't know, last year we did end up going because we just couldn't find a time. We ended up going like at the last one, which was after Halloween. But
Do not recommend. Do not recommend.
There's yes,
they had
it's
really
winding down.
They had really given up by then, and I get it. You're tired. I'm sure half the pumpkins were rotten, but man,
but my experience with music at this event is usually they just play the Monster Mash over and over again. I'm not mad at it, but
as you should. I mean, having live music is cool, and Minnesota is definitely very into live music, but I don't get this band choice.
It was weird. They should have had that band from the Train Museum, the old guys with their teddy bears.
I could have done another jig. Yeah. Someone on Instagram asked for a video of me doing the jig, and I was like, Samantha tried to take it, and I threatened her life. So you'll never see that. You'll never see that jig.
You never will.
Another thing we did is we went to Candlelight Halloween Classics, which is definitely fun. Me buying tickets based on some targeted Facebook advertising.
We got these tickets back in like July.
Yeah, because I saw this and I went, yes, I am that bitch. We're going. And we didn't even really know what it was. Honestly.
I didn't even know what I was like, is this live music? What is this? As we were walking to it.
Yeah, Samantha's like, I don't really care for music. What are you dragging me to? It was a string quartet in the St. Paul Athletics Center, which is a very fancy building. It was up on the 3rd floor. It sort of felt like they had just sort of broken into the building and decided it's like not for concerts. They decided.
It's a venue. Like I think people have weddings there.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's very beautiful.
But this, I assumed it was the St. Paul Athletic Club putting on the event, but it was not. It was this like app.
Yeah,
I guess this like event app thing called Fever. Never heard of it. They must have just rented this venue and then like got this local quartet to play, and they're making a profit somehow off of all that. But it was fun.
It was just a scheme to get us to download the app, really, which I of course immediately deleted after we left. So I don't know that that's really worth their while. But it was very elegant, sort of. I felt very sophisticated that we went and we saw a string quartet.
It was elegant with all of the fake candles everywhere. And
there was
people there in gowns. I was like, holy shit.
That's true. There were people there, like, like you might expect people to go to like the opera. I mean, Samantha, well, you wore a skirt. It's not like you didn't. You said you found one, I assume, by the side of the road.
Liz and I were discussing what to wear because, again, we really didn't know what this even was. And Liz was telling me to wear the Spooky Train Museum sweatshirt. I'm glad I didn't do that. So then I responded that I found a skirt, which, I found it in the back of my closet. I don't wear a lot of skirts.
No, it was by the side of the road. You brushed it off. You're like, this is good.
Good enough.
No, you looked very nice. I'm totally kidding. So it was just, it was like things for movies. But they did a great job. And
it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
It was a nice, an elegant evening.
Yes, the entire time after we left, we were walking to a restaurant that we weren't able to get a table at, and then walked back. We just kept repeating how we're elegant sophisticates now.
We're elegant, which actually it turns out Arden was dining in that restaurant.
I saw
couldn't get that in.
She had our table. Actually, I think she might have been there earlier in the evening.
Screw you, Arden. We wanted dessert. Okay, just kidding. Is that all of the spooky season updates? God, I hope so.
I think that's all we did. I did go to the Lakewood Cemetery Fall Colors
Oh yeah.
celebration. My mom and I went. You didn't go to that one. It was which is very fun. I recommend it if you're in the area in October. It's very fun. They do the trolley tour. You can see their maple trees that are like bright red. Had a cookie, had some cider. It was fun.
Did you paint pumpkins? Do they have that this year?
It was really cold, and my mom and
yeah.
I both forgot to wear a hat. So we got cider, and then while we were waiting for the trolley to come along, they had a really cute little craft that you could do where you made your own little mosaic, like
Oh.
mosaic leaf. Like they had like different leaf motifs and you could make a little mosaic, which we kind of wanted to do, but it was outside and very cold. So we did not do that. We just got cider and we looked at the maple trees while we waited for the trolley. We got immediately on the trolley, and then afterwards we kind of walked through the chapel and then left because it was really cold.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But they also had music there. They had like a little tent with some live music, and it was very fun.
Lovely. Okay, now we can actually talk about Unsolved Mysteries.
All right.
What episode are we on now? We're on season 7. I think it's 16.
I think it is episode 16.
And Samantha goes first this week.
This is an interesting mystery for sure. This is I don't remember if they called it a paranormal or an unusual phenomena or what.
I would call it a fraud, but go on.
You don't say. Listeners, we'll let you decide. I think you should definitely Google a side-by-side of this man's art and what he claims it is, and see for yourself if you think he's legit.
I'm pissed you got this one, to be honest. Just in the spirit of full disclosure, I was like, oh, Samantha gets the art mystery or the art fraud paranormal thing.
Psychic phenomenon.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 46-year-old Brazilian artist Luiz Gasparetto. He claims to be a, quote, spirit channeler, possessing amazing abilities that allow long deceased artists to create new works from beyond the grave.
Interestingly, we talked about how over the summer, Samantha and I went and saw a paranormal art exhibit at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and they had some examples there of people who claimed to channel artists from beyond the grave. So I felt like we were very well informed on this topic.
Yes. And his is just as bad as some of the ones we saw.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that artists, like Claude Monet, dead in the ground. And his spirit, I assume, is up in heaven looking at water lilies and bales of hay. And then he goes, I want to make one last painting, but also I want it to be real bad. Weird choice, Monet, but all right.
There's an expert later in this episode. I didn't write down like what his qualifications were, but he said, why would these very successful, famous artists want to make a cheap imitation of their work from beyond the grave? And honestly, I think cheap imitation is actually a little generous.
Yeah.
For what we're seeing here.
I don't know. This has sort of art sold in a tourist location by the sidewalk kind of vibe. Like what people who like demonstrate for you drawing with pastels really quick, and you're like, okay, that was really quick, but it was also like really bad. It's that.
So bad. So Robert Stack says, quote, as he whips color across the page, he seems to be a man possessed. Indeed, if his astounding assertions are true, his every gesture is directed by the spirits of these long dead masters.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the artists he claims to channel are Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Monet, Picasso, Rembrandt, and Renoir, among others. Van Gogh is another one.
Just all the biggies, Yeah. Just only people that are household names get in touch.
Van Gogh is featured quite a few times. All gone now for decades or centuries, but believe it or not, Louise says that his drawings and paintings are nothing less than their recent work channeled through him.
Mhm.
So at
Mhm.
as an allegedly gifted psychic, he claims this is I'm sorry, this is what Robert I misread my notes. This is what Robert Stack says. Is he a gifted psychic as he claims or a flamboyant showman as common sense would dictate?
Yeah, that is a very good phrase. I'm gonna go with common sense.
Yeah. So Luis grew up in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is Brazil's largest city. The culture there is laced with mysticism, and many consider psychic experiences part of everyday life. Luis's family is no exception. His mother has written 13 books and says that the uh, works were all channeled from the spirit world, meaning her books. One of his brothers channels pop musicians. Wish we could have heard that music.
That would have been amazing.
Louise was just a boy when he first began to believe that he too possessed psychic abilities. At the age of 13, he was overwhelmed by stress, sleeplessness, and trouble at school. His mother thought he needed counseling and took him to see a woman who went by Madame Lais, one of the
Ooh.
city's best known clairvoyants.
Yes, that's often what I do when people need help.
Yeah, if you need counseling, you go see a clairvoyant, of
I was
course.
like, oh, yes, he did need counseling. So we went to a psychic. I was like, oh, okay.
So Louis says that at first he was embarrassed because it was his first time seeing a clairvoyant, but then as the session began, he started to feel his body shaking from the inside. He felt energy inside him and then something holding his throat. When he tried to control himself, the feelings got worse, so he decided to quote, just let it go.
Okay.
He recalls feeling pain and tingling in his arms. To Madame Lais, it was a sign he would be able to channel writing. This was similar to his mother, who channeled writing through her books. But quite unexpectedly, he began to draw instead. And henceforth, he had found his calling. He says that over the next 3 decades, he channeled more than 20,000 paintings by some 50 artists. He says that he speaks to them both verbally and telepathically. And he says that the head of the group of artists is Italian painter. I'm not going to pronounce this right. Do you know this? Modigliani?
No, I have no idea. Sorry.
It's an Italian painter, and if I said that name right, you'd probably know who it was. So his claims. I also love that all of these artists are like, I don't know, in heaven, like as a group, and they have elected a leader.
Well, yeah, all famous artists, once they pass over, they have like a salon. They sit, they discuss art and philosophical ideas, and then they elect someone on Earth to make terrible reproductions of their famous works.
Of course. Luis's claims have gone largely unchallenged in Brazil. Several doctors and researchers who have investigated him have stated that he is genuine, whatever that means. Maybe he genuinely believes what he's doing is channeling. I don't know. Thanks to Brazilian psychic and artist Elise Duburgas, I'm really sorry, Elise. His reputation has begun to spread around the world. Luis founded and runs the Center of Spiritualistic Culture, which caters to, quote, poor and disturbed people in Sao Paulo.
Okay.
Don't know what that means. But the money he makes from his art goes directly to the center. He helps support himself and works as a psychotherapist in his center. In January 1995, Unsolved Mysteries asked him to film one of his channeling sessions. He says that when he is invited to do a presentation of his abilities, he has to ask the spirits if they want to come through him because he cannot do it himself. If they say yes, he will accept the invitation. The show's invitation was apparently accepted because he filmed himself in New York City.
It would be hilarious if he was just like, no, Monet's not in the mood today. Sorry.
Sorry, Unsolved Mysteries. That was literally a direct quote from Robert Stack, who said, apparently the invitation was accepted.
That's hilarious.
So we see Luis working with such intensity that an assistant has to hold down the canvas. He is basically like wildly scribbling. He's kind of like hunched over the canvas. At one point, he covers his hands in paint and is like finger painting.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Monet painted with his fingers? Who knew?
Not only, and it's not like he's delicately dipping his fingers into the paint, he has his entire hands are covered in paint and he's like rubbing them together and like squishing the paint, and it made me uncomfortable, to be honest. And then he's just like rubbing it all over the canvas, and this is how he comes up with his paintings, which apparently he does in a matter of minutes. So he'll just like whip them out like one after another. It looked exhausting, to be
You can
honest.
tell that they're made in a matter of minutes.
So he holds his face in one arm, covering his eyes, while he draws on the canvas with the other. He uses both pastel crayons and acrylic paints, and he says that during his sessions, he feels a quote sensation when the artists come through him and use his arms. Again, he says he just lets go and allows them to draw. He's not apparently doing any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So during the frenetic session, Louise completed 6 drawings and 3 paintings, most in less than 5 minutes. He, quote, moved easily between different artistic styles. He says that he tries not to control anything or put any of his own thoughts or ideas into the drawings. He says that people mistakenly believe that when the artist takes over, he loses consciousness and they have complete control over him. Instead, he says that what actually is happening is that they are, quote, energetically influencing him and that he has learned to be, quote, passive.
Uh-huh.
During the 45 minutes the show was filming, Luis says that he channeled works by 7 artists, among them the greatest of all time. Robert Sachs says this is, quote, an impressive accomplishment, but is it proof that the great masters are hard at work in the afterlife? And this is where he says comparisons between the real life paintings and Louise's show that there is some resemblance, but art experts in the United States are hardly convinced. Again, we're being very generous. His paintings look absolutely nothing. I draw your attention to his painting, his Renoir that they show us, which is like, what is this?
It's a scribble. It's terrible.
His version looks like a college kid after a night out drinking. I mean, what is this hair? It's bizarre. It looks nothing like the original.
I mean, it's a new work, Samantha.
Okay, fair.
He's not going to draw the same thing from the afterlife.
They seem to be suggesting that he was recreating.
They kind of did, but I don't think that's actually what he said.
Oh, fair enough. They do show a side by side, and regardless of whether it's a recreation of the original works or not, there's no resemblance. I guess in his Van Gogh, there's a little starry night swirl in the sky.
Yeah, but that just means he's like looked at one Van Gogh painting.
But it's like, not Starry Night. It's
yeah, it's over a field. It's pretty shitty. I sort of feel like this guy could do better if he didn't spend 5 seconds on each one. I'm not saying there's like no talent there, but part of the showmanship of it is that he's trying to do them like super fast. So
smearing his hands through the paint.
Yeah, that I was like, that is not what Monet did ever. I don't know what you're doing right now. Look, I respect the grift, honestly.
Okay, so Unsolved Mysteries Wiki has the exact quote from art critic Peter Clothier, who says that, quote, the notion that any one of these famous artists, for example, Van Gogh, a man of extraordinary intensity and seriousness of purpose, would want to come back after death and produce 3rd, 4th, or 5th rate imitations of what they successfully did during their lives seems incredible.
I mean, yeah, and again, that's kind of nice. That's like putting it nicely.
Yeah. Art writer Hunter, I can't pronounce his last name, says that Louise seems to be possessed by some force. However, she theorizes that the, quote, force is his own subconscious playing back images that he has seen in art history books.
I mean, that's also, this woman's like, yeah, maybe he believes it, but I don't. I sort of think the whole thing is a scam, but I a little bit respect that.
I mean, I assume is he selling these so you can watch him do it and in 5 minutes he can crank out a painting that he sells to you for
I
God knows
mean,
how much.
somehow he's funding his center through this.
Yeah, so you might be closer to the truth.
The line between art and scam is sometimes very thin. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. I pulled up I'll throw in a recommendation for a book. It's a little out of date because it's over a decade old. But if you're interested in that sort of thing, the book, The $12 Million Stuffed Shark, The Curious Economics of Contemporary Art, is
I've been
very
meaning to read
interesting.
that.
It's a lot about how, because art doesn't follow traditional economic theory, because the price and value of it is entirely subjective, how that works, how really like high, like big art sales at this point are really just for money laundering. Stuff like that is very interesting. I feel like the examples and stuff are gonna, not be of today's market, but it's a very interesting look at like how that all works. Anyway,
Yeah, I've been meaning to read that book.
I would recommend it.
I'll leave you with Robert Stack's parting words, which is Louise a window to the metaphysical side of art? Can there possibly be any substance to his stunning claims? No matter what one may believe, even a skeptic has to admit that he puts on a great show.
Okay, I'll go along with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are on to a missing person. This is a sad case. This is, we're going to open on the Men's Club in Houston, Texas, which is described as an upscale adult night spot. The clientele is mostly male, the entertainment topless.
Okay.
That's what they said.
Is that on the side of the building?
Yeah. Robert Stack tells us, for many of us, it is tempting to make assumptions about the type of women who dance and work here, but don't be deceived. This is kind of dated. This is taking a little moment to remind you that sex workers and even just people who work in the adult industry are in fact people. So don't be such judgmental old biddies. This is the case of Tara Beckenridge, who waited tables at the Men's Club from 1989 to 1992. So she didn't dance there. She was just a server, but I don't know, whatever. Unsolved Mystery doesn't want you to judge her as a harlot. She was a nice girl, Samantha.
She was waiting tables. I don't know.
Yeah, she was making good money. If anything, I'm jealous. She grew up in Del Rio, Texas, of a population of about 34,000 at the time. She graduated high school in 1987 and moved to Houston She moved to Houston to pursue a career in photography and worked as a waitress to support herself. And it was eventually working at the Men's Club because, hey, there's great tips. And her mom wants you to know that she was just there for the money. And I was kind of like, yeah, so is everybody. You think there's women working at the Men's Club?
Love of being topless.
You think there's women working at the Men's Club that aren't there for the money? Just for the sheer sick thrill. It reminds me of, though this is later, in Independence Day, Will Smith's girlfriend it's like scandalous that she's a stripper. And they're like, well, she's doing it because she has a kid. And it's like, yeah, everybody's doing it for money. Like, what are you talking about? Guess what? This lady needed money. She also lived in a capitalist society. Okay, anyway. Sadly, in 1992, she vanished without a trace. Her family and the authorities believe Tara was murdered. The top suspect, guess what, is her boyfriend at the time, Wayne Hecker, who does talk to Unsolved Mysteries, and you will not like him. They originally met.
It's never a good idea.
No, the hubris, the audacity of men who are clearly / allegedly guilty. Because he hasn't been convicted of anything, but he definitely is like, I can talk my way out of this, and I'm here to tell you, Wayne, you did no such thing. He met Tara in 1989. And even though Tara did not actually dance at the Men's Club, he did not approve of the job. But guess what? Wayne was not employed, so he didn't really get a lot of say in the matter. This drove me crazy. Tara is paying his bills. He's living. He's just a mooch.
But he wants her to have a more respectable career.
where she'll make less money, the money that he needs to spend on his own stuff. I hate it. Anyway, yeah, he didn't approve, but guess what? He didn't get a lot of say in the matter. Tara's mother describes their relationship as, quote, rocky at best, which is rocky to say the least. Nah, not good. Tara frequently considered moving out of the place that she shared with Wayne and just leaving him to his own devices, which she clearly deserved. But in the July of 92, she went home to visit her parents. Her mom, looking back, was concerned that she was unhappy, but didn't really ask a lot of questions about it because it didn't seem like her business. So she doesn't know what problems her daughter was facing at the time. Soon she was back in Houston and back to work. The night that we're referring to, it was a slow night, and Tara volunteered to go home early, which was unlike her because usually she was one of the last waitresses to leave. She would stay and try to make as much money as possible. We know for her last known whereabouts that Tara changed into her regular clothes and punched out of the club at 12:29 a.m. She is seen with a really amazing pink duffel bag, at least in the reenactment. She did not respond to the doorman saying goodbye, which was also unusual. I don't know that anyone would make anything of that if that's not the night that she disappeared, but she seemed distracted, I guess.
Yeah.
Now we hear from a guy that's a Sergeant Brad, and he has a mustache, and I called that on his face and on the case.
That might be my favorite one yet.
Which I can't believe I've never used before, but anyway. So a bouncer escorted her to her vehicle, carried her bag, watched her get into the car, and told her to drive safe. I have learned from Twitter that if you are a stripper, you have to pay a bouncer to walk you to your car.
What?
Yeah, you have to tip out several people at the end of the night. You have to tip out the DJ. You might have to tip out the doorman. You have to pay fees to the house. You have to pay a cut of what you made to wherever you're working. And you also have to tip the bouncer for walking you to your car for your own safety because men cannot be trusted. It's a wonderful system.
Flabbergasted.
It's a wonderful system. Anyway, so the bouncer does remember walking her to her car. He remembers her getting into her car and driving.
Remembers the 5 she slipped in.
Yeah, he remembers. Well, but that shows you why he would remember, I guess, is why I bring it up. And that he did and because he's, in charge of the safety of the women that work there, he did watch her car leave, and he did not see anyone following her at that time. But where was this loser Wayne? He says that he was in a pool hall 15 minutes away. He
spending his girlfriend's money.
Yeah. He's a real winner. So he had called Tara at work earlier in that evening, but hadn't spoken to her. I'm sure they were like, dude, she's actually has a job.
Oh, he hadn't? Is this his account that he hadn't spoken to her?
No, I think the club did confirm that he had.
I was trying to think of why she was so upset and distracted. If they had gotten into a fight on the phone or something.
Right. I think you might be right, but I think the club did confirm that he had called, but that she was busy, and they were like, go away, Wayne. So he says he got home at 5 a.m.
From the pool hall?
Yes.
When is bar close at the pool hall?
Yeah, I don't know when bars close in Houston. That's quite late. Anyway, he got home at 5 and was surprised that she wasn't there. I mean, she did leave work early, but usually I think she left around 2. So, he would expect her to be home way before 5. She wasn't there, so he went to find her, supposedly. And at 7 a.m., he found her car abandoned on the side of the freeway. Neither the car alarm nor the flashers were on. The car was locked, and he could see the can of mace she always carried visible inside the car. So when she left the vehicle, she didn't take that with her, which seems odd. According to employees at the pool hall, Wayne left at 12:30 and wasn't seen again until 1:45. The place where Tara's car was found is directly in between the men's club and the pool hall.
Wait, what time did she leave work again?
So she leaves work at 12. She punches out at 12:29.
And what time did he leave the pool hall?
12:30.
Okay.
Now,
interesting.
There isn't, as far as this episode lets us know, a way he would have known that. But I'm wondering if somehow someone tipped him off.
Well,
because it's
yeah. I mean, they could have
exactly
been walking into the pool hall and been like, "Hey, I saw your girlfriend leave work."
right. Also,
Or
these
did she stop by the pool hall?
right because the pool hall's only 15 minutes away, or
Or
maybe
did he call again and they were like, "She's gone, like she left already?"
he paid the bouncer or the doorman or someone to tell him
Ooh,
when she
conspiracy.
left because he's like, you know, possessive
Controlling,
and
yeah.
keeping an eye on her. He
Mm,
often seems like he picked her up from work sometimes too.
okay.
Um, or at least he did in one of the reenactments. I don't know. Anyway, so Unsolved Mysteries asks Wayne directly to respond to the accusation that he was involved. And then he gives a very unsatisfying, rambling explanation that he doesn't owe anyone an explanation except the Lord. And then he goes
Um,
and then he goes on about how he's waiting to hear for God from an answer, and until then he doesn't think anyone will be satisfied. Wayne, if you didn't do it, just say you didn't do it. What is this?
that's a weird answer that makes you sound guilty.
Yes. I mean, it's allegedly not suspicious or whatever we've said in the past.
Allegedly not mysterious.
Yeah, allegedly not. No, this is extremely suspicious, Wayne. Okay. But because there was no actual evidence of foul play, there's just Tara's car. She's listed as a missing person. The police did uncover a series of love notes suggesting there was another man in Tara's life. One note even mentions marriage. But when they look into it, they find out that this was an admirer from the club who often left her large tips. So this is just a guy who comes into the gentleman's club and is fixated on Tara.
Oh, I'm sure you get yeah, she would get this all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Why she kept these notes, I don't know. Maybe they were who knows. But from talking to people at the club, it was clear that she had rejected his advances and there was nothing threatening in the notes. It was just like, I love you. There was one that was like, I can't wait till we get married, stuff like that. But it wasn't um there wasn't a point where he said like, if I can't have you, no one can, or any of that kind of bullshit. Um, However, Tara's family points out that Wayne did know about this guy and wasn't super happy about it. And then at one point, Wayne says, I loved the woman to death, which is not a great choice of words, Wayne.
Mm.
Okay, unfortunately, this is the end. Unfortunately, there is no update, and Wayne died in October 2005. So I hope we find out what happened to Tara, but it seems more and more unlikely, which is very sad.
Not good.
Not great. Okay. Now you get a surprisingly charming war story.
This I cried. This
Is this real? This sounds made up as fuck.
apparently it was real enough to be featured in a Ronald Reagan speech.
Okay, but that only makes me more suspicious and you know it.
I don't know. Well, yes, but Fritz is in the episode
Yeah, that's true. I believe Fritz.
telling his own story. So this made me cry.
And he has a mustache I called the true German.
Love it. Okay, so this is Lost Love, and it's the Friends of Fritz Finken. So this story is one of the most, quote, remarkable tales to ever come out of World War II. Remarkable for the fact that it involves no fighting or bloodshed. In January 1973, a Reader's Digest magazine published the account titled Truce in the Forest, and in 1985, it was a focal point of a speech given by then President Ronald Reagan. Now, Fritz Winken, the German man at the center of the story, hopes to find 3 unknown American soldiers and write the closing chapter of this amazing saga. So, this is the story. In December 1944, the battered German army launched its last great offensive along an 85-mile front in Belgium's Ardennes forest. It's a great day for me in pronunciations. The infamous Battle of the Bulge. Nearly 16,000 American soldiers would lose their lives, and another 60,000 would be wounded or captured. It was the costliest battle the United States would wage in any war. Within earshot of the fighting, on the edges of the forest near the German-Belgian border, stood a small isolated hunting cabin. There, Fritz, who was then 12 years old, lived with his mother, Elizabeth. His father, Hubert, had moved his family from their hometown, which is in a city I can't pronounce in Germany, to this cabin in October 1944 for safekeeping. Their home, and Hubert's bakery had been damaged the previous April by Allied bombing. Life in the forest was very difficult. It was a shack. It was like they call it a cabin, but it
Yeah.
was literally a one-room shack. While Hubert served as a civilian baker for the German army 20 miles away, Fritz and Elizabeth struggled to put food on the table. Fritz says that Hubert thought that the war would be over by Christmas. A lot of people thought that, but it was not to be. Their stay in the cabin was much longer than they anticipated. And on Christmas Eve, 1944, there was an air of sadness and uncertainty. Hubert had still not returned, and his family was resigned to the fact that they would be spending the holiday without him. Elizabeth tried to comfort Fritz, saying that Hubert would have come home from Christmas if he was able to do so. She figured he was held up with work and the weather, and she tried to make the evening as festive as possible. She scraped together a Christmas meal of a few potatoes and a, quote, scrawny pet rooster. The rooster apparently was named Herman and had been making too much noise for them to feel safe, so they killed him and ate him for Christmas.
Sorry, Herman.
So
Snitches get stitches.
Stitches get stitches, Herman. So as Elizabeth made dinner, there was a knock at the front door. Fritz believed that it was Hubert, but Elizabeth knew better and blew out the candles and went to the door. Fritz was beside her, and when she opened the door, they discovered 3 American soldiers outside. They tried to talk to Elizabeth, but she and Fritz did not speak English. One of the soldiers had clearly been shot in the leg, and they were all suffering from frostbite. They asked if they could come inside, and she was hesitant but eventually agreed, using hand motions to invite them in.
I mean, she's risking her own life to do this.
Right.
To harbor the enemy.
Yes, Robert Stack tells us that Elizabeth knew full well that harboring the enemy was punishable by death, but seeing the state of the soldiers were in, she was more than willing to take the risk.
This
Also, it
tells
was
me
Christmas, you know.
This tells me she's not very committed to the Nazi cause, so I appreciate that.
Right. So the injured soldier had been shot in the leg and had lost a great deal of blood. She had the others place him in a bed and did her best to make him comfortable. She tore her bed sheets to make bandages for him. One of the soldiers asked Elizabeth if she spoke French, and fortunately she did, so they were able to communicate through French. He was able to explain to her that they had lost their unit, and for the past 2 days and nights they had been wandering through the forest hiding from Germans. They had all but given up hope when they spotted smoke rising from the cabin. Fritz says that
it was Herman, and he lit the way. The smoke of Herman cooking.
Oh, Herman, your legacy lives on.
Yeah, thank you for your sacrifice, Herman.
Fritz says that Elizabeth was basically went into mom mode. She worried for the soldiers,
So
especially
cute.
especially the wounded one, and she did everything she could with what the limited means she had available. She had Fritz add potatoes, greens, and water to the meal and make it a soup for them and the soldiers. He recalls that the soldiers were very nice. It was like
they better fucking be. Jesus, here they are risking their lives to help them.
I get the sense that they were all quite young because he kind of describes them as being like the big boys from the neighborhood, like the older kids, basically.
They're probably like 18, right?
Right, yeah, I'm sure. Elizabeth made them feel right at home, and they began to relax in anticipation of an unexpected Christmas dinner. Then
of Herman.
Of poor Herman. R.I.P. Herman. You died for the greater good. So then came another knock at the door, and I'm sure watching this, you could just imagine how like their blood must
like,
just run cold.
Shit.
Right. Not great. So Fritz and Elizabeth thought that it must be more Americans. Fritz went and opened the door, but to their surprise, there were 4 German soldiers outside.
Fucking Nazi. What are the odds of this?
I know.
It doesn't sound like anyone has stumbled upon this shack
in months.
Entire time. But then they're cooking old Herman, and soldiers from both sides are just coming out of the forest like, oh, I heard you were cooking an old rooster.
So Fritz was petrified with fear. They said that these soldiers said that they had also lost their unit and asked if they could come inside and warm up for a little while. Elizabeth, in an act of bravery I can not even fathom, told them that not only would they be allowed to come inside and warm up, they would get a nice dinner, but only if they accepted the guests who are also already inside. She then said to them, "This is Christmas night. There will be no shooting around here. You can put your arms, their guns, in the wooden shed over there. Come inside. We'll have a nice Christmas." Can you imagine the balls of steel it would take to say this?
I'm sure this woman has passed on long ago, but we need her negotiating every peace treaty. We need her like heading up the UN. Like this is, I would have been like, no. And then tried to get the other soldiers to run out in time, which I'm sure would not have worked. No. And instead she's like, I'm going to negotiate the peace treaty of the century by getting all of these people to have rooster soup together.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing feat. Only a mom could pull off.
So they indeed agreed to put their weapons in the shed. Meanwhile, Elizabeth went inside, turned to the Americans, who by then noticed that there were Germans coming, and told them to turn their weapons in as well. And she like gathered up all their guns because they had heard this exchange and they had all grabbed their weapons and were like, holy shit, this is not going the way we want.
And then she's just like, and she goes and gets them.
Gathers up all their guns. She's like, give those to me, and takes them all. And then so the Germans come in, and she calmly tells Fritz to get more potatoes and water as they, quote, had more mouths to feed.
Also, I don't think these people have that much food. So this is like a good portion of their rations, I'm sure.
Well, they're used to they were struggling to feed themselves, and there was 2 of them. And
suddenly they're feeding a whole battalion or whatever.
It was like 8 people who, by the way, I am a big fan of Unsolved Mysteries war reenactments because the soldiers they cast are so hot.
They always are. Remember my true love, Duncan?
Yes, and this is like 8 of them. All these dudes are so hot.
Clearly, Unsolved Mysteries thinks that if you were a soldier in World War II, you were like a dashing model. Yeah. Like when the war was over, you went back to your career modeling underwear. Like, I don't know where they get this image, but it's very hilarious.
It's great. You should definitely watch this episode. So for a minute or 2, there was apparently some tension in the room, but then,
no shit.
Then, according to Fritz, the warmth and good smells began to take the edge off. There was a sense of hospitality in the room. The Germans produced a bottle of wine and a loaf of bread. The Americans shared their cigarettes, and they discovered that one of the German soldiers spoke English. He told them that he was a medical student before the war, and he went over to the wounded American soldier and began to like tend to him. He determined that while he had been shot and lost a lot of blood, as long as they didn't, the cold had kept the infection at bay, and the entire night he would go over and like periodically tend to the wounded man. They also had a first aid kit, which helped. So they applied a clean dressing to the wound.
I think this shows that like these 18-year-olds, they're not really invested on this on either side, right? Like these are other people's wars that they've been forced to go fight. They really would rather be home with their families, having Christmas dinner. They don't want to be doing this shit. And I feel like Unsolved Mysteries kind of underplays that these are Nazis by referring to them as German soldiers all the time. But I feel like it's like, okay, this woman is German. I don't know that she really would have had much choice but to help them. I'm sure they would have killed her if she hadn't helped them. But this is also just such a genius solution where everyone gets to live.
Right.
So it's like, should you feed Nazis Christmas dinner? I mean, preferably no. But in this situation, like, I feel like it's sort of life or death.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I mean, you should share your rooster soup if it means you and your son make it out alive.
And,
Absolutely.
and she also saved the life of these 3 Americans too, which she really had no obligation to do that at all.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's ingenious mothering on her part.
Yep. So we are told that that night hostilities ceased in at least one quarter of the forest. As American and German soldiers sat down together to honor the Christmas spirit, Elizabeth said grace. However, it was not a regular prayer, it was something spontaneous. She said, quote, "Let's all be thankful to the Lord for being together tonight, being peaceful in this terrible war. Let's
For not killing me and my son. Lord, please keep us alive through this meal." Yeah.
Liz is spitballing, but I think that's the message underpinning the whole thing. She goes on to say, "Let's enjoy dinner, the little things that we have, and let's promise to be friendly to each other forever if possible. Let's also pray for an end to this terrible war so that we can all go home very soon." Fritz says that by the end of her prayer, all of the soldiers were crying.
I mean, this is why I was like, what? Is this real? But it is.
He was surprised to see even the German sergeant in tears. But soon they started to eat and the tears disappeared. From then on, there was feelings of friendship that permeated the whole room. He says that it was wonderful and unforgettable.
That's why we need this woman negotiating
Seriously,
peace deals.
absolutely. So after dinner, the soldiers drifted outside one by one. Elizabeth and Fritz joined them, and as they gazed heavenward, each gave thanks in their own way. This really doesn't feel real. I'm not sure if this actually happened, but that night the men would, quote, "sleep side by side under the same roof, the differences of war temporarily set aside." Fritz says that the soldiers were peaceful. One would never think that they were two different kinds of soldiers and that just one day before they would have shot each other. Fritz remembers that the spirit of brotherhood continued the next morning. The Germans helped construct a makeshift stretcher for the injured American, and they even gave the other Americans directions to get back to their line. One of the Americans asked if it would be quicker to go through like some direction which had been held by the Allies, but the Germans told them no because the Nazis had retaken that area. This bit of information may have helped save the Americans' lives.
They were like, oh no, you'll find the rest of our unit that way, and they'll definitely kill you.
Right. So that same day, Fritz and Elizabeth left with the Germans and were reunited with Hubert. 5 months later, the war ended. So
it's Fritz on the show.
Right. So in 1958, Fritz married, and in 1959, he immigrated to the United States. A few years later, at the urging of American friends, he submitted the story to Reader's Digest. A senior researcher for the publication tracked down Elizabeth. She and Hubert had remained there after the war, and she confirmed the amazing story. In 1963, Hubert passed away, and in 1966, Elizabeth passed away as well. Today, Fritz is an American citizen living in Honolulu. Like his father before him, he owns and operates a bakery called Fritz's European Bakery, which he opened in 1971. But that special night in 1944 remains a defining moment in his life. He now hopes to find the soldiers who helped him learn the true meaning of Christmas. And by this, I mean the American soldiers are the ones
he was not interested in reuniting with the Nazis.
He was not. Fritz says that it showed him what his mother could do, and it showed him what one single human being can do to avoid bloodshed and bring about peace. It also showed him at a very early age that we are all alike no matter what uniform we wear. We have the same joys, the same sorrows, and the same problems. He says that it was a very significant experience in his life. He will never forget it. And he feels, I mean, for real, this is like out of a storybook. And he feels obligated to spread his mother's message that people should always be willing to help each other no matter the situation. So, unfortunately, at this time, Fritz recalled only scant details about the American soldiers. He believes that the man who spoke French was named Jim. He had dark hair and a stocky build, and he studied banking in Ohio. The second soldier was named Robin, or possibly Warren. He was tall and slender with blonde hair. The wounded soldier was named Harry, but they had nicknamed him Herbie. He had dark hair and a slight build. Two of the German soldiers were named Heinz and Willie, and they were both 16.
Oh my god!
No wonder they didn't want to kill each other. So the German corporal was 23. So this is solved.
He was a wise old man at 23.
This is solved. I'm gonna read the update off the Unsolved Mysteries wiki. Um, oh, there's the cutest picture in the world of them being reunited.
I saw it. It is really
Oh,
cute.
so this is solved. After the story re-aired in October 1995, a man named Eldridge Ward called the telecenter. He is a volunteer chaplain at the Northampton Manor Nursing Home in Frederick, Maryland. He recognized Fritz's story as one often recounted by a 76-year-old resident named Ralph Henry Blake. Ralph, a retired bricklayer from Frederick, had moved to the nursing home a year earlier due to heart problems. Unsolved Mysteries looked into Ralph's background and learned that in 1944 he had been a sergeant serving with the 121st Infantry 8th Division of the U.S. Army in Belgium. Along with Eldridge, Ralph had also told the story several times to his family. Fritz immediately phoned Ralph, and he confirmed that he was one of the soldiers who had celebrated Christmas with Fritz and Elizabeth. Fritz asked Ralph whether he remembered him from that night in the forest, and he said, "Oh yes, I remember you. You must be Fritz." He even still had the map and compass that one of the German soldiers gave him. Fritz was very excited that Ralph had been found, and he could hardly wait to meet him. On January 19th, 1996, Fritz flew to Maryland to meet Ralph. The two were joyfully reunited at Ralph's nursing home. Fritz says that he just had to look in his eyes and he knew it was him. Ralph recognized him as well, even though they had changed so much over the years. Fritz said that it was a great experience to be able to see him again. He was especially happy when Ralph told him, quote, "Your mother saved my life." He was glad that her courage had not been forgotten. Ralph says that he never thought he would ever see Fritz again when he left Germany. He says that the day of the reunion was a special one for him. Coincidentally, it took place just a day after another exciting event, Ralph's 50th wedding anniversary. To cap the joyous celebration, his daughter-in-law fixed the same meal Elizabeth had served some 52 years ago, a hearty bowl of chicken soup.
Stop! What? Oh my god!
I know! I hope it was a scrawny rooster. Fritz says that the reunion was the high point of his life and a fulfillment of a lifelong dream. It was something he had given up all hope of ever experiencing. He and Ralph were proof that true friendship and brotherhood can endure time, distance, and the ravages of war. This Unsolved Mysteries wiki is like a storybook. Who wrote this? Fritz was also later reunited with one of the other American soldiers. It is not known if any of the German soldiers were located. However, it was noted that the German army had a high casualty rate in the final months of the war, leading Fritz to believe that they may have died in battle. In May 1999, Ralph passed away at the age of 79. On December 8th, 2001, Fritz passed away at the age of 69.
You know, it seemed like Fritz had a very good life after the war.
His bakery, the picture of him in his bakery, I was like, this man makes some good baked goods. I want to go to this bakery. I bet it's an amazing little place.
Yeah. Just living in Honolulu, carrying on your dad's business. Seems like a good life. Power to you, Fritz. He's just like
story.
Such a German stereotype with his mustache and just like his very serious way of talking. I don't know. It's just so adorable. It's a very sweet story. And it's apparently true, which
I kind of can't believe it. But yeah, I did cry. I love the reenactment. Those soldiers were super hot. The whole thing was amazing.
Herman sacrificed his life, but he was remembered 52 years later in another bowl of soup. Amazing. Okay, I have a fraud for y'all.
Another one. Two in one episode.
I'm not sure they call it the other one a fraud, but a con artist at a church? Say it ain't so. This is the case of Carlos Garcia and the Holy Family Church in Virginia Beach, Virginia. At least at the time, the church served a tight-knit Hispanic community. Carlos joined their ranks in 1985. We hear from Iris, a council member for the church, about how honest he seemed and how very invested he was in the Mexican community there. He was able to earn people's trust very quickly. He spent a lot of time at the church. He really dedicated himself to getting to know people and being involved in events and stuff like that. By 1988, Carlos was voted president and treasurer of the local pastoral council, which oversaw the church budget. No one suspected that he would end up stealing $2 million from the church and his fellow parishioners. He used this prestigious position at the church to attract clients to his illegitimate tax preparation business. For example, we hear from one couple that over the course of years, he bilked them out of $13,000, claiming that it needed to go to the IRS. This is a very evil scam because the people at this church really did not have money to spare. And due
Yeah.
to the language barrier and many of them being recent immigrants, they had very little knowledge of how American tax law worked. And they trusted Carlos. They put their faith in Carlos to help them prepare their taxes. And I think in this case, he had already helped them like with their immigration cards and getting citizen, like he earned their trust from
Right.
doing these other legitimate things. And so then when they were like, "Oh, but how do we pay our taxes?" Carlos was like, "Don't worry, I'll help you." And I feel like in the 80s, you know how conservative people always complain that you have to like press 1 for English or what, like I
Right.
I don't think that in the 80s many materials were as readily available in Spanish. I don't think that
Sure.
there was a lot of information in Spanish to help people figure out how, and taxes are purposely needlessly complicated. Like
Right.
there's no the IRS knows what you owe. There's no reason you have to, like, figure it out and guess and send it in and then them go like, They already know. They could just send you a bill, but then that would wreck this, like, whole economy we have with tax preparation. Anyway,
And
Carlos was
throw in a language barrier, and it's just an environment that's
Yes!
rife for people to be taken advantage
So
of.
so it didn't occur to people that Carlos was being dishonest because they knew him through the church, and he did help them previously. He established trust with them, and this is just very evil. But that was just one part of his scam. Through his work at the church, he had access to people's personal information, and he used that to obtain phony credit cards and other people's names, and also the names of their deceased relatives, and also open fraudulent bank accounts. Back when things were on paper, it was pretty easy to just fill out forms, um, get credit cards, whatever, and nobody is going, "Hey, you're not so and so," right?
Right.
We hear from a special agent Thomas at this point, who has a very pale mustache I called the baked potato. I know, it's a little unsettling. Okay, so Carlos was also something of a sweetheart swindler. He dated a woman Unsolved Mysteries calls Anna, though that was not her real name, for 6 years. In this time, he learned that Anna's mother had a good amount of money, and he encouraged her to invest it with his credit union. However, without her knowledge, Carlos added himself as a co-signer on the account and quickly withdrew $25,000.
Oh my god.
The gig was up when someone at the church contacted the authorities. They had given Carlos cash for 3 straight years to pay their taxes, only eventually to hear from the IRS that there was no record of these payments. So they had been hiring Carlos to prepare their taxes. They had given Carlos money to pay their taxes, and then eventually hear from the IRS that they're like, "Hey, why haven't you been paying your taxes?" So, um, this person was smart enough to go to the authorities and not go straight to Carlos, right? So that means the FBI has this person call Carlos while they're listening on the line. And he, of course, Carlos claimed it was a big misunderstanding and that he would straighten it out. But the person got Carlos to say, like, yes, I prepared the paperwork, and yes, I paid your taxes, and don't worry about it. So that person was like off the hook, right? At this point, we're hearing from a special agent, C.A. Barg, and his mustache is called I Bore You because it's just a boring cop mustache. Anyway, because of this evidence from this one witness, he was arrested a few days later and posted bail. Of course, he quickly left for Virginia Beach and vanished. Only after he left did the FBI figure out his real name, which was Fernando Zapicato. He was originally from Argentina, not Mexico, as he had claimed, which I feel like is just an extra slight to all the people at this church.
Oh
Because
my
he's
god.
definitely like ingratiated himself as one of them, and it was
Yeah.
all a big lie. So it turns out that he was a career once they figured out, oh, this is actually Fernando, this guy was a career con artist. He had been working up and down the East Coast for quite a while, and he was known to use at least 17 aliases. At the very end, we hear from a nun that tells us that the loss of trust was actually worse than the loss of money. But then I was like, but did you lose any money, nun? It's kind of.
Is it worse though?
Is it worse? I do not think that this family had $13,000 to lose, and then they still hadn't even paid their taxes, so they had to pay their taxes on top of that. Okay, so Fernando was on the run for a while, but thanks to a viewer's tip, he was tracked down to Miami, where he was working in a convenience store. He pled guilty to several counts, served 2 years, and has since been released. I mean, I don't know what a fair punishment for this is, but I do feel like this is a very insidious. He's just preying on people that have so little. What a fucking bastard.
Oh, I hate it.
Anyway, that's the end of the episode. We got to rate it now.
All right. So our first category is mysteriousness.
I don't know that it's that mysterious.
You know, it's really not.
I don't think the art thing is real, but it was an interesting segment. I appreciate it as a segment. Sure. I don't think that it's a real thing, but I like it when they do those more wacky ones.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see. Oh, we don't know what happened to Tara. That is mysterious, though. I think we sort of know what happened.
We have a hunch of what happened to Tara. So I'm gonna say it's allegedly not mysterious again.
Yeah, that is allegedly not mysterious. Your Christmas story is just the sweetest, possibly made up story I've ever heard. And then we have this con artist story. So I'm gonna say actually thumbs down on mysterious. Other than Tara, not very mysterious.
Agreed. I'm gonna give a big thumbs up, however, for reenactments.
Oh, so good. Actually, okay, first of all, you get the Gentlemen's Club reenactments, which are mwah, mwah, chef's kiss. I loved them. They're so cheesy and over the top, just like women with gigantic blonde hair, just like, of course, they can't show any nudity, obviously. So it's a lot of like legs and high heels and women just like, woo! I don't know. It's great. It's great. I loved it. Obviously the war, lost love thing, those reenactments are like, that should just be a movie. I can't believe that hasn't been made into a movie yet. What else?
I mean, just going off of the lost love reenactments alone, I give it a thumbs up. I thought it was great.
Samantha's like hottest soldiers we've seen yet. Thumbs up. I mean, even Definitely. Well, I guess that's not a reenactment. Him making the art. That was actually just a thing that supposedly happened. Anyway, so thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Fashion? Fine. I don't know. Yeah. The fashion lately has not been like outstanding. It's because
I don't think we're in the 80s anymore, and it's become a little more subdued, and there's less like, I don't know, hot pink puff paint shirts and cool stuff like that.
Really a shame.
Yeah, so there was a cool pink duffel bag. There's some like nightlife fashion. I don't know. There's like the soldier costume. Who cares? No, sideways, I guess.
Robert Stack, I thought he had some really good lines in this segment, particularly in the art one and the lost love.
He gets to wax poetic, but he also gets to be kind of snide.
Right. Which is honestly a great place for Robert Stack to be.
You're gonna see two sides of Stack, and I like both of them.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
How are we gonna rate this? I honestly really liked this episode.
I think this is good.
I love the lost love. It might be my favorite lost love yet.
I feel like this is a solid 4.
Yeah, I agree. Liked it a lot.
I wish
4 mysteries. There was an unnecessary update, but we still got 4 mysteries, so I'm not mad at it. I liked it.
Justice for Tara. That one's really sad, but that's the only sad spot also. So that's great.
Right.
Yeah, no, I like this one a lot. Like good. Real good. Okay. Are we doing recommendations this week?
I don't have a recommendation. If you have one, I'll hand it over to you. I have nothing.
Okay. Well, we did talk a lot about spooky season stuff, so that could all count. I'm going to throw in a recommendation for The Midnight Club on Netflix, which is like the TV show I've been waiting for like, I don't know, 30 years. It is an adaptation of a Christopher Pike book, which if you don't know, sorry to your youth, but back when there were not that many YA titles, like it was kind of a neglected book genre. Mm-hmm. There was this guy whose name was not Christopher Pike, because that's a Star Trek character that he used as a pen name. But there was some dude who wrote these mysterious, weird ass thrillers that had the most amazing covers of like hot blonde girls driving skeletons in their cars and like hands popping out of graves and all sorts of ridiculous things. And they had the weirdest ass plots. And I fucking I cannot tell you how much I loved these books. I ate them up. I read every single one I could get my hands on multiple times. I just loved them. There was time travel. There was weird revenge murders. There was serial killers. It turns out the sexy teenagers are actually lizard people. That happened multiple times, I'll have you know. But one of his most beloved books was called The Midnight Club, and it was about sexy teenagers that all had all of them were about sexy teenagers. But in The Midnight Club, it was about sexy teenagers who all had terminal illnesses and were at this remote hospice that was just for sexy dying teenagers.
Oh.
And they would meet every night at midnight to tell each other short stories for some reason. So it was sort of a stories within a book format. It was just very extremely charming. And, you know, then most of them died and it was all very, very tragic for your like preteen heart to cry your eyes out, right? And they finally, after years and years and years of me praying every day for some Christopher Pike content, we finally get this show from Mike Flanagan, who did Midnight Mass, which I've talked about how much I love. He did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. He got the whatevers to do this show. So it's the format of the teenagers go to the hospice, which I swear it's because of reading this book and not knowing how that word is pronounced, but I always want to say hospice. Sorry.
Like pumpkin spice?
Like like spice. Just from seeing it written down and not hearing it, you know?
Fair enough.
I was like 12. Give me a break. Anyway, but it's still a problem that I have to this day, and I blame the Midnight Club. So they're all at the hospice, and they're meeting, and they're telling stories, except that in the show, those stories are like other Christopher Pike books. Oh my God. Hook
That's
it
fun.
to my veins. I loved it so much. It's like those stories, but elevate. Like it couldn't have been treated better.
Lovely.
I had such a good time. It has a lot of the cast from Midnight Mass in it. It's very silly, but it's so enjoyable. My note is I have no idea what this experience is like if you did not read those books. I bet it's confusing and weird. I don't really know. I can't imagine my life without reading those books in my formative years, so I have no idea. But goddamn, I loved it. It takes place in the 90s. The music is so good. The outfits are so good. I loved it. 5 out of 5 Robert Stacks. 10s across the board. Love you, Midnight Club. We better get a second season. If we don't, I am going to be so fucking pissed. Netflix, are you listening? That is not. It ends on kind of a cliffhanger. If you do not renew it, I will be violently angry. Also, maybe if there's enough interest in this, we can finally get the movie of the Christopher Pike book, Season of Passage, that I've always wanted, because it's about space vampires.
Nice.
From Mars.
Well, where else would they be from?
Yeah, exactly. And I read that book, I don't know, 10 times probably. And every day I wake up and I'm like, are they making a Season of Passage movie yet? No? Okay. Where are my space vampires? So if anybody else watched that show and you want to talk about it with me in the Facebook group, love to hear from you. I briefly, years ago, upon first moving here, was running a Christopher Pike book club where we were meeting to read Christopher Pike books. And the problem with that book, I mean, I made pins, like, it was a whole thing. The problem with that book club is those books are terrible. So as much as you might have loved them when you were like, 11.
Right.
They're not really going to hold up when you're like almost 40.
Yeah.
It was kind of painful, but this way you can enjoy them again without that experience of going, oh my God, this is awful. And why does this guy talk about scuba diving so much? Why is this book mostly about how to scuba dive? I'm so confused. Yeah, that's all. That's
Very
all.
nice. Very nice.
Okay, so everyone, first of all, you need to download the Repod app. I'm
Yes.
slightly disappointed in the 5 that you guys are not isolating sound clips from our episodes, which is something you can do on that app, and I think would be very funny. So you need to download the app, because also it was the only business with the integrity, decency, honesty, whatever, to give us money. And we
Absolutely.
appreciate it so much.
Support them because they support us.
Exactly. So we have a Patreon. This month we are discussing the absolute worst episode of Bones, as
Hopefully
rated.
it comes out this month. I've yet to edit it. So you'll either hear that on Halloween or on November 1st.
That's coming in under the wire. But we were discussing what, according to IMDb number ratings, is the worst episode of Bones. And guess what? It is pretty bad.
It is extremely bad. So look forward to that.
And then next month, we will be talking about the new episodes of the reboot.
Yes,
so give us $1 for that. And then we have, look, are we going to keep doing Twitter now? I don't know, but we have a Twitter. And I actually posted some stuff on Instagram for once. So if you want to see some pictures from Spooky Train Day,
head over there.
That's perhaps it's you. If you have a paranormal experience yourself, have you seen a ghost? Have you seen dark that's darker than the darkness? Have you had a word with New Michelle? You need to send over your spooky story to perhapsitsyouPodcast@gmail.com. And I'm just going to say that was everything.
I think it's everything.
5 stars. Oh my God. You hook up with someone, take their phone, rate us 5 stars. And you're going, Liz, but I don't know this person's, key code to their phone. It's probably not hard. It's probably like 6969. Just like guess. Okay. See where the smudges are. Line, do a little detective work.
Yes.
Look at the phone, see where the fingerprints are, and try typing that in. And then once you do that, don't look at their personal information, but do go to Apple Podcasts and write these podcasts 5 stars. This is my new scheme of how we're going to get more reviews.
5-star reviews. I mean, we're not getting more listeners, so we got to figure something out.
No, exactly.
Our
only hope is people hooking up and using other people's phones without their knowledge. I love it. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you. Keep barking.
Bye.